I am excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Tyrone Poole. Tyrone is an entrepreneur who turned his own housing journey into a creative and scalable solution. His story is a reminder for us all that it's not hard to be one emergency away from housing insecurity. Me in welcoming Tyrone.
Good morning. Sorry, I can't stand behind the podium. It's not my thing. You know, I'm about to stand up here and talk to you about housing. The first thing I thought about when I got up here was the fact that my wife is looking at me right now and she is thinking, he is not wearing the outfit I set out for him this morning. No, she was like, black does not go against that navy blue. You have to wear a white t-shirt. Well, honey, you didn't tell me not to eat jelly on my toast this morning, so that's what happened. Yeah. I'm actually a little nervous. It's been a long time, with 2 years since the last time I spoke publicly. COVID has changed our lives in many ways. Got to shake these jitters off and get into it. Maybe another round of applause will do it for me. We can do it again. Nope, nothing. Didn't help at all. Thanks for trying, though. All right, like they said, my name is Tyrone Poole. I am the CEO and founder of OneApp, a platform that helps renters find housing, and we'll get into that. But I actually started off doing something completely different. I went to school to be a fireman. That was my game plan. I was very excited to grow up and be a fireman for a very long time, actually. Right after high school, I graduated. I went straight to college. I got my EMT, my paramedic. I got my fire science degree, associate's degree, and I graduated 4th out of 72 of my class. Only African-American graduate. I got into the fire academy on my very first attempt. Now, that's a big deal because there's like hundreds of people going after a few slots, and it's very competitive. And if you got your fire science degree, it helps. If you have your EMT and paramedic, it helps. And I graduated and I got into my very first attempt. And 6 weeks into the academy, I get injured. I tear my leg apart really bad, end up hospitalized for 9 months. It was a terrible accident. I still have to wear this. I probably can't see it on camera, but it's a stocking I have to wear for the rest of my life, from pedal edema, from internal bleeding. That will always be the case. But I'll tell you how it happened a little bit. Let me take this down. I'm messing it up. So we had a fire engine, and it was parked exactly 100 meters from the hydrant. And we had a timed exercise. So the goal was, when the horn blew, we all had to jump off the engine and then go do our parts. Now, I was one of the bigger guys, so my job was to grab the hose off the top of the truck. Now, not the new trucks today have like a spool on the side where you can just pull it. But the old trucks had a figure 8 on top of hose that weighed hundreds of pounds. So my job when the horn blew was to jump off the back, or jump off, run around the back, jump on top of this little platform, grab the hose off the top, put it on my shoulder, jump down, and then go all the way to the hydrant. And every few steps I have to drop a piece off. That way it makes this nice S and doesn't get any knots. And then connect it to the hydrant. That's my job. The water will flow through, they'll spray it in the air, time. So the clock starts, the horn blows, I jump off the back, I run across, I jump on top, grab the hose, and as soon as I turn to jump off this platform, it breaks. Now, normally an engine is a steel platform. This is a prop. It has no wheels, it's just propped up, and it has like this wooden plank that's on the back. So I step, and I have 70 pounds of clothing and about 150 pounds of hose, okay? And one of my legs punctures right through the wood, and my other one stays on top. And 1,000 people must have done this before me. Okay, but somehow Tyrone Poole gets completely destroyed in this accident. And they have to pull me out of this platform. They lay me on the ground. I do the splits. I literally heard my tendons pop right here. My muscle actually tore from the bone and rolled up right here. I had a huge hematoma. I almost bled to death with no external bleeding. So I laid there and they were, walk it off, Poole. Walk it off. And I passed out, woke up in the hospital, leg elevated above my heart, 16 out of 24 hours a day. So for a very long time. So during that time in the hospital, I lose everything that I own. My car is repossessed because I didn't make a payment. I'm evicted from my apartment because I don't pay rent. That's a long time to be in the hospital without paying any bills. Actually, the hospital bills were actually hitting my credit report when I was still in the hospital. I didn't even have a chance to pay them yet. My family came through a little bit, helped me put my stuff in a storage unit, but then my storage unit was repossessed because I didn't make the payments on that. So all my baby pictures and all of that gone. And things got really bad. But at the end of the day, 9 months goes by and I am on cloud nine because I'm finally getting out of this hospital. And so I get out, and at the beginning, things are great. Like, I'm couch hopping with friends, with family. Everybody's welcoming me in. People give me, have shoes, coats. Here you go, here you go. And how long you think that lasts for? Well, maybe 90 days. At the end of that time, it is you becoming a pest. Like, people are supporting you. And it gets to the point to where you try to live a life of being invisible, where you try to show up at people's house at, 10 o'clock at night, and you try to be gone by 7 a.m. in the morning so they don't notice your footprint, making a mess or eating food or doing stuff like that. And it's a tough life. And so I went through that for a while. And then I finally ended up at the YWCA homeless shelter. I ended up a friend's house. I showed up at his house at about 10, and all my stuff was by the door. Every single thing I own, all my bags. And that's never a good sign. And I get there and I'm like, and he's like, hey, you're not going to be able to crash here tonight. And I'm asking like, oh, no problem. I'll leave first thing in the morning. And he's like, you actually can't, I'll be gone for work in the morning. My wife's like, she doesn't want to have to do that with you in the morning. So, but we made you dinner. Here's, your to-go bag. Now, remember, I'm on crutches. So I have to take all my bags, my crutches, and my food and try to walk all the way back to the Max stop, which is our public train. And it was about 1.5 mile walk. And I get about 3/4 there. I had to take a break. My food, which was some fried chicken. It was pretty good. And I make it all the way to the Max stop. Eventually, I'm sweaty, I'm tired. And I remember laying on the ground and putting my foot on the bench because my foot was huge. It was so much internal bleeding. I was walking on it way longer than I should be. And I lay back on the ground, and as soon as my head touches the concrete, I throw up everything I just ate. Like, so nauseous, vomited everything up, and I just laid there. And then over some time, police officer showed up, and he grabs me off the ground, and he's like, is this you? Did you just throw up on the ground? And I think he assumed I was probably drunk or some alcoholic or something like that. And eventually, beginning, he was yelling, but after I spoke to him for a minute, and he set me up on the bench, and, he was like, I apologize. And where do you want me to take you? Where do you want to go? And that was the first time in life I literally had nowhere. Like, I had nowhere to go. I had no destination to give him. And that's when he took me to the YWCA homeless shelter. And when we got there, I don't remember if it was his sister or his cousin, but somebody he knew there. And we got there, and it's late at night, maybe like 11 or after. And they open up the door, and the first thing I remember them being is like, you can't bring him here. I'm like, the shelter doesn't even want me to live here. But they were serious. I was like, there's a process. There's a path you got to go through to get into the shelter, and this ain't it. You can't just bring people here. And so he communicated for a while. They ended up taking me in. Now, I remember, it's a gym. This is Goose Hollow in Portland, Oregon. It's like a church that has a huge gym at the bottom, and they turned it into a shelter. The Y did overnight. And so they turned the lights on in this gym. It's like midnight. Everybody has to wake up. And it's the most embarrassing thing ever. They're trying to set me up with a cot. And I get in one, and I remember that was the hardest night of my entire life. I laid there, and I remember the smell was burning my nose. So I took my shirt and I turned it inside out and backwards and put it back on. Every single thing I owned was under my cot in garbage bags. And I don't remember how I got here. Like, I was winning. Like, I was winning in life. And now I'm sitting in this position. And I remember the lights came on in the morning at 7 a.m. sharp. And I hopped up and I was out. Like, I was ready to full sprint out the door. And Dell Davis, the director of the Y at that time, she stopped me and she's like, Tyrone Poole, we gotta do an intake with you. And I'm like, we don't gotta do no intake. I'm never coming back here again. Thank you very much. I'm out. And she says some magic words to me. She was like, well, we have housing assistance help. And that's all I needed to hear. So I went, met with her, and that gave me a letter that paid rent anywhere I wanted to live that for a year, 12 months. It was the Winter Shelter Housing Grant, which was a godsend at that time. And I was able to get this magical letter. And I remember I took care of it because I was like, this is my key. I go online, I'm on Zillow, apartments.com, all these websites, looking at all these places that I can maximize my rent at. And I'm daydreaming about these houses, apartments I'm about to move into. And then I go out and try to apply to some of these places the next day. And they help you with your application fee at the beginning. I applied to the first few, and I get denied. It was one of the first time I've ever been, denied for housing, but it was also my first place that wasn't like student housing too. But it was just, you're not approved to live here. And I was like, whatever, you were my second choice anyway, I'll go find another place. And I applied to the next place, to the next place, to the next place. And I got the same thing every single time, denied. And it's my first time doing it. I didn't know why. And I remember I went through the classes and the programs at the Y, and they try to help you find a place. And bless their hearts, but they were not, they didn't actually know what the problem was. They used to tell me, you got to dress the part. We got to send me to Dress for Success, got me some nicer clothes so I could present myself better. And I could, show up and make a better impact on some of these people when I apply. And so I tried all that, and I denied. And a lot of times when I tell this story, people think that this is like the worst part of the story is being denied all over the place. It's actually not. The worst part is when you're sitting in the shelter for a month doing nothing. You're not even applying anywhere anymore. Like, you literally feel like it is impossible to get a place. And so you just let the time go by. You wake up from the night shelter, you go to the day shelter, and then the day shelter closed, you go to the night shelter. And you're just doing that in a circle without any actual plan anymore, because you know that you can't get approved anywhere. You borrowed as many $50 as you possibly can. There's no more place to get application fees from. And that was the hardest moments from that whole process. But one day I am coming home on the Max, coming back to the shelter. And since it's not my TED Talk, I can be more honest with you guys. When I give my TED Talk, I say, I got off the Max 2 stops early, right? That's not exactly, I got off 2 stops early, but it wasn't just for the fun of it. There were fare inspectors that were getting on the Max. And back in those days, I had no fare. So as soon as they got on the front, we used to all run off the back, and me with crutches trying to get away from fare inspectors. So I have to get off the Max 2 stops before. And which 2 stops is like 20 blocks, and I'm like, oh, now I got to walk the rest of this distance back to the shelter. And I'm walking, and there's this apartment community. It's maybe like a 9-plex or so. And they have a yard sign that says for rent out front. And it looks like a really nice duplex, not duplex, townhome. And so I go and I talked to the lady out front, and I remember like it was yesterday, because only a $25 application fee, which is way cheaper than normal application fee. And she walks me through, and I tell her I'm with the Y, and she's like, oh, we take their money and we work with them a lot. And I go back and to the Y, and I'm like, I need $25, and they help me, and I go apply. And the next night, I wake up in the morning and my phone rings, and I am like prepared. I'm about to tell her everything I ever did. I'm showing my grades from school. I'm gonna do everything to help her approve me. And right when she called, she's like, this Tyrone? I'm like, yep. And she's like, I want to let you know that you've been approved. And I was like, what? And she just said, you're approved. And I remember asking her why. I was like, why did you approve me? And of course I did that after I signed all the paperwork and was all the way in. But she was like, what do you mean? Like, you just met our screening criteria. And that was the first time I ever had really understood your screening criteria. And she gave me a copy of it and said, this is screening criteria and for our company. And what screening criteria is, for those who don't know, it's really a list of criteria that landlords use to determine eligibility. It's like their algorithm to determine risk, to assess risk. Matter of fact, we can cue one of these slides. I can show you guys what screening criteria, some detail. Next one. All right, so this is screening criteria. This is some of the big pieces, all right? You got past due debt to landlords. You can't owe landlords money. Income, they usually require you to make somewhere between 2 to 3.5 times the rent. Can't have bankruptcies, you got your eviction records, you don't like evictions, So employment history, how long you've been at your job. There's a ton of things that they measure. Rental history, how long you've been a renter, you can't rent less than 1 year or you're denied here, or you can't make less than 3 times the rent or you're denied here. And for me, I remember, matter of fact, before we even do that, how many of these things do you think you get to miss and still be approved to the property? Half, 50%, you gotta get 50% right, maybe? One, next slide, please. You miss a single one of these. I don't care if you got a 700 credit score, if you've never had a bounce check and not sufficient funds, if your income is 3.5 times the rent, you don't have 12 months rental history, game over for you, right? And that's how it works. And this is just the majority of them. Like some landlords get really creative on some of their criteria. And sometimes it's not even just the criteria. There's softwares and things that they use that make it really difficult. Like, matter of fact, have you guys ever heard of a product called YieldStar? It's a tool that basically allows landlords to maximize rents, which is great. I have nothing against landlords maximizing profitability. It's just what it does is it takes in consideration all of the like units in the area. So if there's 50 2-bedroom, 1-bathrooms in the area and 30 of them rent in a month, it will automatically raise the price on yours the next day because of supply and demand, right? So it helps you maximize. That swing can easily be $100 plus overnight. And so what that does, though, it seems like $100 is not a big deal, but if you need to make 3 times the rent, that $100 is a $300 swing in qualification. All right. So we had a person that used our platform and applied to a place, and it said she was approved. And when she showed up, she was denied. And we found out about YieldStar and how it changes the rent. We found out that the only time she would have qualified is she applied on the 14th, the 28th, or the 29th. Any other days of the month, she would have been denied if she walked in there. It's a cold game. I'm telling you, it is difficult to find a place out here. And that is and for me, it was a lot of luck. I went to this place when I asked her why, and I looked at that criteria. They said, we take evictions within the last year with a double deposit. That was a huge one for me because I just had a very recent eviction and I just happened to find that property. So it worked out for me in that case. I ended up working at the YWCA. First, I volunteered there, and then I got a job there. And I worked for a bunch of other programs after that, all in housing as an advocate. And it was my calling. I did it for 9 years. And I always had this idea in my mind that if I could solve access to housing, if I could just build this one product. And all I wanted to do was go out and collect the screening criteria of all these management companies that I had almost memorized at this point and put them into one database and allow a renter to pull their background check and screen at the same time, like all the properties. And because you got to remember, I moved into a place that was 6 blocks away from the shelter. 6 blocks. I was in the shelter for 90 days, going door to door from a place that was in plain sight right down the street, but they're invisible because it was impossible for me to locate that. So I ended up there was this competition that Portland put on called the Startup PDX Challenge, and I applied for it. And I ended up, making a long story short, I won this competition that was a pretty big competition. They funded the concept. They were looking for solution-specific problems. So it was in energy or food or housing. If you could solve a city problem in that space, out of the box thinking. So I applied, I won that competition. They ended up funding the prototype, and I was able to build this platform. It was called noappfee.com at that time. Very creative name. And it was basically saying, put your background check in here and we'll show you where you qualify to live. I had 309 of the 389 companies in Oregon participate in the platform. Pulling your background check on this app is the equivalent of spending $200,000 in application fees and going around and applying for 11 years, done in a minute from your phone. That's what we built and launched. It was huge. It was huge. So I want to show you guys something that actually was one of the biggest moments of my entire life. There was a OPB. You guys ever heard Oregon Public Broadcast? They put on this, homelessness is a big thing in Oregon, houselessness. And it's a big thing everywhere, but it's really big in Oregon. And they put on this, I forgot the term they used, but basically when you walk around, you see homeless people all the time, but you don't even notice them anymore. You just become numb to them. There's a term for it. And they wanted to bring it back to life because how big is a problem it is, and we don't even notice them. And so they did these diaries of homeless people where they gave them a microphone and they let them record their diaries for a month. And it became very popular. Like some of the people that they were following, they had thousands of people listening to their diaries every single week. And matter of fact, so there was this one family that was very popular. And a lot of people fell for them because he was an iron worker that got a job in like Michigan and went all the way out there and then ended up working there for a couple of years with his family, or a couple of months with his family, and got caught up in some traffic ticket and had a warrant that was 10 years old. And they shipped him all the way back to Oregon, and he was in jail for like 5 months. And then right when he got up in court in Oregon, they just dismissed it. They were like, we don't care about this, and threw it out. But he had already lost his job. His family had to figure out how to get back here on their own. It was a terrible thing. And he had been homeless now for like 8 months, and so he had these diaries. And I want you to play what I was driving home. I'm literally in my car driving home. And this is OneApp has been live for I don't know, maybe 4 months now. So it's brand new to the market. And we're driving home, and play this audio for me.
We found this application called OneApp Oregon, and it was a real what they do is they consolidate all of your information into one place, and then they apply that information to different houses that are for rent in your area, and it tells you if you match the criteria or what you have to do to be approved. It's actually a pretty cool app. It takes a little while.
Narrowed it down for us finally.
Yeah, it takes a little while to get dialed in on it. It's a lot of work. It
screened it for us, and then it would tell us, it popped up on what places we were eligible for and what we had to do, so it made it easier for us to finally find this place.
We're pretty happy right now.
We don't believe it's true. I don't believe it's true. I'm waiting for them to tell me they're going to take it back. Our first night here, the kids couldn't believe it. They're waiting for us to tell them that it's a dream and we got to leave. Our first night here, our 12-year-old told us that he's going to sleep well, and I took it, oh, you're tired, you're going to sleep well, right? And he said, no, Mom, I'm going to sleep happy. Yeah. And then we woke him up the next day to go to school, and for the first time since we've been in Oregon, since last summer, our son woke up happy. He woke up with a smile on his face.
Yeah, he loves this place. We love this place. This area is beautiful. We're right by Salish Ponds. The kids are going to be able to go fishing anytime they want.
It's too good to be true. It's way out of our league.
Yeah, we're in a neighborhood like we never thought we would live in.
Truly freaking amazing.
We look forward to you guys coming here now.
So that was a moment. You can clap if you want to. That's okay. That's okay. I will tell you, I pulled over on the side of the road, and I felt like electricity was going through my veins at that moment. I mean, I had launched this platform. It had nothing but everything I deal with is bugs and issues and things that's not working right, and background checks that's not pulling right, and all this. And I didn't notice that there were this family that I had been listening to literally just found a place on my app. And so the first thing I do is I find this name, and I call OPB, and I'm like, hey, I need you to connect me to this family. And they're like, yeah, this is not a donations. We're not allowing people to give. This is just for the audio. We don't give them we're not giving you their details. And I was like, my name is Tyrone Poole. I'm the one who built the app that this family got, housed on. He's like, And so they connect me to another person and they're like, okay, which family are you trying to reach? And I was like, the one that got the house on OneApp. Find me that family. And he was like, all the ones that actually got house said they got it through OneApp. And that showed me everything we had worked for this whole time had value, So it was a big moment for us. Do you guys want to see what his map looked like? That family's map? I have to show you because you can cue the next slide. This is what happened when that family got their background check pulled on OneApp. Next one. So you remember, OneApp pulls your background check and screens you against thousands of vacancies. Green is approved. Orange is conditionally approved. Red is denied. For whatever reason, you don't meet your background check. This is the map that they had to look at. Can you imagine the odds of you finding one of those places by random luck if this did not exist at that moment? I can guarantee you they would have been homeless for another year easily. Because that is the definition of his background check with his work experience holes, with the eviction, with all the barriers that family had to overcome. That's what their opportunity looked like. It's almost impossible to locate. So yes, now what I'm gonna tell you next is gonna be hard for you to hear. This software, we have now shut down in all the markets that we were in, and I will actually never relaunch this software. I know. We every contract that we had lined up, we put it into, and we're no longer moving this product at all. And I'm gonna explain to you why. But I know I freaked out a lot of cities, I freaked out a lot of investors, but I learned a lot through this process. And this is actually not the tool to housing. And I'm so glad that you guys have been talking so much about community because it plays a big part of it. So when we launched OneApp, after a year, we used a 20,000 user set to figure out what the outcomes for all of our renters were. The outcomes on OneApp overall were almost identical to the outcomes of renters applications that didn't use OneApp. So we already had statistics on what people approval denied and conditional approval rate was before OneApp launched. On OneApp, I can see every single application in detail. I can see where they applied, they approved, denied, or conditional, or whatever. And it was a 20%, in real life without OneApp, it's a 20% approval rate. Only 20% of people apply, get approved. It's about a 50% conditionally approved rate and a 30% denial rate. On OneApp, it was almost identical. And it weirded me out because I'm like, are they colorblind? How many colorblind Oregonians exist out here? It's green, yellow, and red. Like, if it's green, you apply there. If it's red, you don't. Why are people still applying to denied places? And it was so we decided to do we use SEI. It's a self-enhancement. It's a organization I love in Oregon. And we decided to use their space for a weekend to do a pilot. So we brought a couple hundred people in, and we allowed them to use OneApp, and we gave them a $25 gift card. It was from every program that, we basically said, we'll pay all your application fee even at the property if you come here and do it. And so a lot of people showed up. It was packed. We ran it for an entire weekend. And what we learned is that the reason OneApp's outcomes were almost identical to real life is for two major reasons. The first reason, renters really cared about the property they were applying to, like the way it looked, its appearance. It didn't matter when we pulled a background check on there, and we had there was a woman that I remember like it was yesterday, right? Her name was Chandrika Smith. We actually were friends for a long time. And she put her background check on there, and she had a Section 8 voucher that expired in 2 days. And so I was like, oh, perfect. Let's get you a background check pulled. And she's like, I already have a OneApp account. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see what the problem is. She logs in, and I see green pins everywhere. And it's not a lot, but it's enough. I'm like, you should be able to find a place. And she goes straight for the green pins, which is something that they all do first. They all say, okay, let me look at the ones I'm approved for. And we going through them, and she's going through them like switching screens every second. And I'm like, whoa, you don't got that many green pins to choose from. You better slow down and start paying attention to some of these. And she was like, I need a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. And some of them, she was just like, no. And just the look of it, she knew what she wanted her place to look like, and those weren't it. And so we finally got to one that was the right square footage. It had the right look. And I was like, what's wrong with this one? And she's like, I don't know, but I remember this one. Something was wrong with it. And so she's going through the photos and she's like, oh, that's it. I don't see nothing. So I'm like, what's wrong with it? She was like, you don't see these blue bedrooms? I have 2 daughters. I'm not moving my little girls into little boy bedrooms. And that was literally enough for her to say this property doesn't work for her. And then she went on to properties that she was not approved to and started trying to figure out how to get into those. Now, originally, it was like, this is crazy. Like, why are you not applying to the place that you are approved for? And I had a harsh awakening by some very close advocates in housing that helped me change my perspective. I built this app from a place of being homeless. I would have taken anything, and that's why the app made sense to me. But that's not the reality for most people. Most people are not in that position. And so they actually do care. And the fact that I thought they shouldn't care was a very privileged position to be in. You know, in reality, a person, there's no such thing as saying that when you become so poor that you no longer should have a right to what you like. Like that's like going up to somebody who's a vegetarian and giving them a big steak dinner and being like, here you go. And they were like, I don't eat meat. Like, well, you ain't hungry then. If you was hungry, you'd be eating this steak. That's not how it works. People, you can't reach a poor level so much that you no longer should have value in what you spending 50% of your money on. Like that, like they have the right to apply to a place that they actually like, that they feel good about living in. And so that was one of the 2 problems. The second problem was community. It played a big part in people's life. Basically, it didn't matter if OneApp said, there's 100 places you qualify for. Out of 4,000, there's 110. Here they go. If 20 of those are in Beaverton, some are in Gresham, some are in Hillsborough, maybe Vancouver, right across the bridge in Washington. But I want to live in Portland. Like, that's where my church is. That's where my job is. That's where my family is. That's where my community is. All those other approvals don't really matter. It really comes down to all I really have to choose from is these few. And people were not willing to move away from these other places. And I originally thought I need to help push them into that direction, because my value as a company only existed if people chose the green pens, you know. But at the end of the day, after meeting with so many people and hearing and talking to them, I mean, there was one woman who said, how long is this going to take? Because afterwards, I need to go watch the fight. And it was the Mayweather fight. This is a $250 fight, okay? I don't have enough money to afford this fight. But somehow this woman who has a housing voucher is about to go watch a $250 fight. And I'm like, how? So I help her through the process really quick. And I'm like, where are you going to watch this fight at? And she was like, oh, I'm going to my friend's house. It's $5 in a bottle. That's community. Community is $5 in a bottle, and you can watch a $250 fight. That's how it works. That's how it works. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you a story about my personal community where I live. I live in a cul-de-sac, okay? And it has about maybe 12 houses in this cul-de-sac. And I live in the dead center middle. So if you were to turn down my cul-de-sac, I'm right in the middle. And there was this new neighbor we just got. It's all white Asian people, maybe I think an Indian person in my cul-de-sac. And I got 6 months ago, we got the first Black family that moved in there. All right, and they moved at the very first house. And I remember going on my jog in the morning, headphones in, and I'm jogging. I see the moving truck there, and I see them, and it's this woman, and she's older, and she's trying to get this box out. And a piece of me wants to help, but I don't know her yet. So I'm just kind of like, is she gonna hurt herself trying to get this out of there, going slowly? And she sees me, and then she stops and looks at me, and she was like, boy, are you just gonna watch me try to get this box out? Or are you gonna help me get this out the trunk? And I tell you, I immediately felt like I knew her. Like I knew everything about her. She was like, it was everything about her mannerism, just her disappointment of when she looked at me reminded me of my mom exactly. Like perfectly. And I jump out and I'm like, absolutely. And I go and I help her grab this box and I take it in the house and she has a truck full and just her. And I remember asking like, are you doing this by yourself? And she's like, no, my husband's getting the rest of the stuff. He told me don't mess with this stuff, but I'm just sitting here and I feel like I got to do something. So I'm like, I'm gonna use this as my workout. I'm gonna keep my heart rate over 140 and I'm gonna take these boxes out. So I make it, if you got an Apple Watch, it runs your life, right? Like everything you do was about this watch. So I was like, let me get all my rings closed by doing this. So I helped get everything out. And I thought it was gonna be like 10 minutes, like an hour and 45 minutes later, her husband shows up and I'm upstairs in her house. And he comes into the house. His name is Theo. And he starts, he's like, hey, my wife said you empty out this truck. Now, because I've been talking to his wife for an hour and 45 minutes, I feel like I know everything about him. My comfort level is already there. So I'm already instantly like, I'm like, yeah, she said something about your back. So I wanted to make sure I took care of it for you. And he's like, my back. And she's like, I didn't say nothing about your back. Don't listen to him. So, and we talking. So he's like, you live in this neighborhood? I'm like, yeah, the big house right there, the house bigger than all the other houses on the block. And he's like, I can barely see because it ain't got no land. And his house has a bunch of land, but it's a smaller house. And so I'm like, so we going back and forth. And they have 2 kids, and it's a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. And they come with him. And so I introduced him to my daughters because I have 5 daughters. Me and my wife have 5 girls. And I know that's a round of applause by itself. So they play, and then I help them finish that moving. And they end up playing with my kids at the house a bunch of the time. Later on, since they're at my house, my oldest daughter starts to braid one of the other girls' hair. And they end up eating at my house for lunch. Later on, it gets dark time, and the kids come downstairs and like, Mom, can they stay the night? And I was like, listen, you got to ask their parents. And so we ask, and they're like, wait, no. And so we let them stay the night. I mean, basically, the amount of value that they got from just moving into that community. I mean, think about it. Let's say community bucks. All right, let's make up a new term. Community bucks. It's amount of money. It's not real dollars, but it's dollars that you spend. So she moved in, and I moved her entire moving truck out. She didn't even know me. That's 2 hours. I'll say $100 an hour for that. That's $200 me doing that. All right. That's how much I have to charge her for that. Since her kids got there, my wife was watching those kids. That's probably another, I don't know, $150 for watching 2 kids all day. We fed them lunch. They ate dinner. Then they stayed the night at the pool suites downstairs in the guest room. And they stayed the night with no parents. A kid-free night. What is that, like $1,000 of value right there? Yeah. So, I mean, I met her 8 hours ago. Think about that. In 8 hours, she's already spent $1,000 in community bucks. All right. That is how powerful a community can be. That's why I want to push on the fact that it's a completely different thing. And I know people are like, why they got to be Black to be a part of your community? I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you what's behind that, but I can tell you that if that woman was Asian, it would have been different. If she'd have looked at me and said, boy, you're not going to help me get this bag, these boxes out the truck, or if you're just going to watch me take these boxes out, I would have taken that completely different. Sorry, I didn't mean to be, watching you. And I'd have left. I wouldn't have taken that as an invitation to come in her house. It would have completely different. If it had been a white person, and they said, boy, you just gonna watch me take these boxes out? I don't know how I would have took that one. But to be honest, like I'm not a politically correct speaker. So don't, if that's what you was hoping for, I missed it completely on that. I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know how I would have taken that. So, and the community goes multiple ways. The reason I even added this to my speech is because just Friday of last week at my house, it's Friday. We had a long week. I've been working on this talk. I'm rusty. I've been off the stage in a really long time. And what happens is my kids ask the question that is the hardest question that get asked at 5 o'clock at night at the end of a long week. We on the couch and they look at me and my wife and say, "What's for dinner?" That question is a terrible question to ask. And same thing that happens always. I look over at my wife. She looks back at me, but then I look back at her. She looks back at me, And I realized one of us got to make dinner for these kids, and they all eat different stuff. And we start getting into it. Like I'm tired. I don't want to, I've been up all day, this and that. And I need to ask, some of these things are so hard to value. So I want to ask you guys, what are the value of hot coals on a barbecue? Sounds like a weird question, but Theo called that night and said, Tyrone, we got a family event going on over here. We just had to add a bunch of new hot coals to the thing to finish our food, but they're gonna go cold soon. So if you got some food you want to bring over here, drop it off and we throw it on the grill. That's it, just hot coals. That's what he happened to have at that moment. And when I tell you the impact of hot coals in our life at that moment was huge. I remember my wife, we in the freezer, she's like, Tyrone, everything we got is frozen. Nothing here is gonna be any good. I'm like, well, then let's go to Kroger. Our Fred Meyer's, let's go to the store, which happens to be like a 5-minute walk from our house, like right outside the cul-de-sac, it's right there. So my wife jumps in the car, she runs over to Fred Meyer's and she's in the store. And I mean, she's just whimsically prancing through the store, knowing that she's about to get a barbecue dinner tonight. And I mean, you got to understand 10 minutes ago, we was talking about why are we even married then? Why even here? And now she in the store with, with an iPhone. All I'm back up, wait, go to the left. The other left. Is that bacon wrap steaks? And she was like, I'm like, why didn't you show me the bacon wrap steaks first? Get those. I'm like, it's okay, baby. That's where we at right now. When 10 minutes ago, we were there because of some hot coals. That got dropped off. She got back to the house. I had my daughter run over there and drop off the meat. And then my kids give me the next best gift. They call and say, Daddy, can we stay? Yes, you can stay. You can stay all now. We like, oh, turn that cocoa melon crap off. We about to watch something. And it was like, so we watch an adult show, Shameless season 11. I don't know if y'all like that, but it's the show. And it's a whole night. It's a whole night. And it's because of some hot coals. So community is, the value is, why am I spending so much time on this? Like my time was almost up and I spent almost all of it talking on community. And it's because the system that I built went against everything that actually mattered. Like I built a platform that showed people where they could go. And it's not the solution to housing. Like I can't just force people to go in places they're approved for. People don't apply to places that they qualify. They apply to places they want to live, period. And my website was proof of that. So I have a $5 million piece of technology on ice that I'm doing nothing with, because it actually just propelled the problem even more. A Black man running around the nation, meeting with all these governments and cities, getting them to reinforce a broken system, a system that is literally keeping us poor. Our communities got destroyed and we just gentrified and forced to live anywhere that we can get in. I mean, I had a person actually say to me, I went to a lot of places to talk about OneApp. And I went back, we met with the hospitals in Portland Legacy. I was asked to join the board there. And they were like, we don't use your product that much because a lot of times the families don't want to go to the suggested places. There's a woman that I'm very close with in Portland. Her name is Shannon Olive. She owns a women's first reentry program for women that comes out of prison. And she flat out told me we used to use OneApp, but it's actually not the tool for us, because when we put women in these homes, they don't invest into the community. They don't do anything. They don't make any friends. They don't know any people. She said a lot of times they don't even invest in their property. She was like, I've gone to these houses after they've been there for 4 months and they don't have a single piece of furniture in there. Nothing. She even has people who they pay the rent, but they stay in somebody else's house on the couch because they find more value sleeping on somebody else's couch than staying in the place that is being paid for. And it's because there's more community dollars. There's more access. There's more wealth. Community is wealth. I don't know this is housing, but I'm going to tell you, community is wealth. And for a lot of these people, the community makes up more money than their jobs. So when you have a strong community, you can pretty much do anything. But if we keep going off the system that I built, we literally are just making it worse. And without that foundation, it's impossible for them to grow upwards. It's like planting a seed over concrete. Like there's nothing that you can do if you can never build a foundation in your community. So what's the solution? How do we solve it? Well, first, what's the problem? Why does landlords not allow people to live where they want to live? Is it because there are a bunch of racist, rich people walking around with top hats on that just don't like poor people? No. And I have to make that clear. The answer is no. It's not because landlords are a bunch of racist people. And believe it or not, I hear that more than you would think in a lot of these circles. That's not the case. Are there racist landlords? Yes. But when I say it's not racism, what I'm saying is there's not enough people being denied just because of the color of skin to make any impact on access to housing. We're talking about less than a half of 1% maybe of people who got denied for that purpose. Now, am I saying that there's no racism in the system? Absolutely not. The housing is racist as hell. The system is the most systematic racism platform I can even imagine. Like it's terrible. And I don't have a lot of time to go into that, but it is. Think of credit, for example. Credit is the number one tool that landlords use to determine risk. It's at the top, weighted heavily than anything else is credit. Now, in Oregon, when is the first time any person, any state starts to look at credit? It's usually when you're about to buy a house. That's the first time you're like, let me get this in order. When was Blacks able to buy a house in Oregon? 1953. That was the first time a Black person could buy land in Oregon. My grandma was born in 39. My mom was born in 63. My mother was the first generation of Black people in Oregon able to buy property. What do you think my grandma taught her about credit? Nothing, zero. She has no access to credit. Matter of fact, no one had access to credit. So you're telling me that the number one tool you use is something that our entire community has been blocked out of since the beginning of time, but this is how you're going to determine risk? This is a terrible way to determine risk in the Black community. We don't even use credit. We don't do anything with credit because it's foreign to us, because you made it that way. Like that was how you built things. That was the system that you put in place, but now we penalize because we haven't mastered that. Like it's complete. Like I said, we don't have time to discuss a whole nother speech. The system is racist. The people aren't so racist. Okay, so I want to just back up because I know landlords get upset sometimes when they hear that. That's not the case. What is the real problem? Risk. That's what it is. Landlords have to be able to manage risk. If they can't manage risk, they lose all their money. Like they cannot make any profits if they don't manage risk. That is the number one key to success for real estate, right? So you have all this, risk, and all these landlords have their own unique screening criteria to manage risk. And like we talked about, the system is not built for Black and brown people. So when you look at what is people doing today to solve this problem, it's usually legislation, right? You have tenant associations and they're fighting for the best case scenario, which is everybody should qualify everywhere that they earn 2 times the rent. That's it. If you ask all the programs in Oregon, what should be the criteria that's real access, they're going to say, if you make 2 times the rent, the rest of that is crap, just use that. If you ask landlords, you have to approve every single person in Oregon. What does that need to look like? They're going to say, if I can't deny, they need a 700 credit score. They need no debt to previous landlords. I don't want to see no evictions. I don't want to see no accounts and collections. They need at least 2 years of rental history. They're going to give you their perfect renter. The delta between those two is what causes all the chaos. It's all about who can railroad the next person, who can get an inch more from the landlords and the law, who can get an inch more from taken from the tenants' rights. And it's a constant battle that actually barely goes anywhere. Like there's no actual legislation that's made enough impact to actually change the reality for all these people. So that's currently what's happening today. But we came up with our own solution. Are you guys ready to think way outside the box? All right. So one thing that we found out with OneApp before we closed it was that 71% of every denied applicant would have been approved if they had a cosigner. You guys know what a cosigner is? A cosigner is a person who basically says, imagine applying for a place and being denied, and a person just pops out of nowhere and their name is Mr. Moneybags and they're with ABC Wealth. And they're like, hey, don't worry about this guy. If he does anything wrong, if he leaves his property with any debt whatsoever, we'll cover it 100%. That's a cosigner. And when that person pops up, guess what? You're approved. You're approved. And it doesn't matter which one of those things you miss. Your credit's not quite there. Your income isn't 3 times the rent. Not enough rental history. You haven't been in your job long enough. Doesn't matter. Cosigner wipes away all the risk. All right. But less than 2% of people apply with a cosigner. So you have this silver bullet to access to housing, but nobody uses it. And you know why? Because you got a better chance finding a unicorn at the end of a rainbow than you do finding a cosigner, somebody to assume all that risk. But we took advantage. We created a product to take advantage of this space that landlords feel very comfortable with. And we called it the OneApp guarantee. And we launched it 2 years ago. And we said, we're going to charge a renter 1 month's rent. So when normally you apply to a place and you pay 1 month's rent plus deposit, which is usually equal to month's rent. So if the rent's $1,500, $3,000 moves you in. We said, we're going to charge 1 month's rent, but if you're denied, we'll tell the landlord, don't charge you deposit. That's going to be a non-refundable fee to the guarantee. And we're going to give you a guarantee, which landlords are like, well, I'll take a guarantee. So they take that. So the renter still pays $3,000 to move in, but now the deposit is no longer a deposit, it's a non-refundable fee. And we took that fee and we put it into a pool. And we basically said, every denied person is going to be the cosigner for every other denied person. And it worked. We now do millions a year, and we have thousands of people that do the guarantee, thousands. And some of the most racist landlords that people was like, oh my God, they're the worst. They take the guarantee, they send all their denied traffic through the guarantee platform, and they approve a huge percentage of them. And because it's at no risk. So if you take what we decided to do, if we look at the example before, is we said the guarantee criteria is 2 times the rent, which is what the tenant advocacy groups and all the housing advocacy wanted to see. But their risk profile, when they have a guarantee, is the equivalent to a person that is the perfect applicant that the landlords are thinking about. And by doing that, we were able to get access, because if you send every denied applicant to me, and then I determine if they're approved or denied, who really controls access to housing? Right? It's not the landlord at that point, and the landlords don't care. They are very happy to give up the control over access if they don't have the risk. And so we launched that product. We just put forth our very first bill. We turned off OneApp, and the new bill is called lease assurance. And we were able to move the concept to scale for 4.5 times the rent. No, not 4.5% of the rent, not 4.5 times the rent, for 4.5% of the rent. So the rent is $1,000 and you're denied for $1,045, you're approved. And now your rent is $1,000 instead of $1,000. It's a small monthly fee and you qualify everywhere, because I can't promote a platform that just allows people to live. You know, Shannon Olive one time said to me, she was like, I love you, Tyrone, but what OneApp is a platform that shows all the Black and brown people where the white people allowed them to live. And it hurt. Like, it hurt. But when you look at the fact that 86% of the properties in Oregon are owned by whites and 2.2 is owned by Blacks, it wasn't a lie. It wasn't a lie. And that can't be the case anymore. You know, and I know a lot of the reason I wanted to do this today, the reason I accepted this platform to be able to talk is because I wanted to first apologize to all of the cities that I ran around and you flew me out there and you took care of me and I pitched this concept and you spent all this time putting these RFPs together. And then all of a sudden I just said, I'm not doing it anymore. And I took some backlash from you, and I don't blame you because of the fact that I sold your entire market on the concept of access. But in reality, over time, I've learned that that's not the case. As a Black man, I cannot run around here forcing people to live in properties that don't make them happy. Like I've learned that access to housing isn't about making sure I can show anyone where the green pins are. but it's making sure that all the pins are green for everybody. That is what equitable access to housing is. And once we can rebuild communities back, the wealth, you want to talk about affordable housing? I can guarantee you, there's only 2 Black people in my community. If there was 5, 6, you could move somebody in there who makes 1.5 times the rent. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. I talked to my mom about this talk before I came out here, and I asked her about communities. She said when she was growing up, you used to be able to spank other people's kids. Can you imagine how strong a community got to be for you to spank somebody else's kids? I mean, that's like having 5 mamas walk. You got to look out for everybody, because you can't get away with nothing no more. There was no, my kids don't have lunch money. Not when you got a community with that many people. There was no evictions because I couldn't pay my rent. There was no, I can't find childcare. You can find childcare and strong. This community is that strong. You can do anything. You're not poor at all. So that is the direction I want to push to. That is the level of access that I want to thrive to have in Oregon. So thank you so much for letting me use this platform to share the story. I appreciate you guys for your time.